Sometimes I think the hardest conversations we have are with our families. I'm Jen Whitmer, and I help teams and leaders solve conflict and personality clashes. And I'm doing a series on how to have hard conversations in different areas of life. And I've talked with Sally Z about feedback, and I've talked with Jess about leadership and principles. And today, Addie Yoder is going to join us to talk about what is it like to have hard conversations with our family. Addie is a mom of 4. She also is a volunteer in several organizations and a leader in some of those organizations. And she is part of a family business. Her family farm is a business. And so there are so many hard conversations that happen within a family. So Addie is going to join us, and we're just going to talk about what is it like to have hard conversations with. So here comes Addie Yoder. Here she comes. And I should make a longer introduction song. Yay! There you are.
Hi.
Yes. So I was just telling the people how fantastic you are. And also, I just need to brag on Addie, how gracious she is. We had planned to do this at noon. Addie got a call from school, sick kid. Turns out Addie is also sick, and yet she is here to talk with us. So thank you.
I had big intentions of fixing my hair, and I was like mid all the things because I thought, oh, it's just a cold, it's fine. Like, I'm going to be like, we're powering through. We have stuff to do. So I had all of these big intentions, and then I spent the day running in circles. And so you get this hair, Addie, instead of fancy hair, Addie.
Hey, listen, it's real life. This is what we do. I won't be surprised if during our live you can hear my husband, who's having a group Zoom on the porch in the window behind us. So, It's just how it goes. I don't think I need to have a hard conversation with him. I think we'll be okay. But in case you hear a random male voice, that's the person. So
Funny.
Yes. Well, Addie, thank you so much for being here. I was telling folks that you have so many aspects of where hard conversations come up. As a mom of 4, I currently have 3 teenagers living in my house and 1 not living in my house in college. You've got a couple. Then there's a family business that you're a part of. And then there's also all the volunteer work that you do.
Yeah.
So just tell us a little bit about just kind of your life situation and what you do. Introduce yourself, and then I'm going to ask you some questions.
Well, you kind of told everybody all of the highlights, I think. Like Jen said, I am first and foremost a farmer, a farm wife, and a mom of 4. So I have 4 kids ranging from 15 to 8. And so that gives me a variety of hard conversations, right? And usually while we're in the car or like on the fly, like I'll catch, like somebody will say something which will prompt a question, and I'll be like on my way to the bathroom.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, wait, that's something we need to talk about. And so there's always that. Yes, we are farmers. We raise corn and soybeans and have some cattle and a crop insurance business in Northeast Missouri, where we farm with my husband's parents and his brother's family. So there's a lot of communication that has to happen, and it has to happen in very specific ways. So we learn all the time about communication through that relationship and through having all of these different personalities in our house. And then, and 2, because the farm pays our bills, I have to communicate in another way and, have different conversations with Jocelyn about house stuff and then farm stuff and then kid stuff. And then there's all of the Addie stuff, right? So I too have my own business, my own personal business. I am a life coach and a podcaster, and I do it all from home so that I can be available for all of the people who are spoiled in my life. And life coach and a podcaster. I volunteer very heavily with anything to do with corn, and
Yeah. Well, I love what you just described. And so for folks who are joining us and I see some friends in the audience, in the comments, who are these people down there? I see your names. Let's just say it like that, that we recognize and that you're farm people, but some of you aren't. And so I just want you to pause for a second and think about what is it like to work with your in-laws? Just I just want you to pause for a second, just think about that. Even if you love your in-laws, there are layers of components about how hard conversations happen. And then you develop these skills that are applicable in so many other places. So farm businesses are almost, I wouldn't say almost always, but very often are family businesses. But there are a lot of other family businesses where you have to have these layered, difficult conversations. So I'm curious from you in that capacity, what do you feel like when you were inexperienced at that? Like when you were starting out, what did it feel like when you had to have some of these types of hard conversations? Like what was that feeling about?
It was that for sure. And there was, we went deep into avoidance a lot of the time because my husband is very much like the even personality in our farm family operation. Like there's big personalities, and he is a big personality. I don't want to act like that, but he's more of like a laugh and have a good time big personality as opposed to like emotional dramatic responses. And so we learned pretty early on, one, to read the room. Like if I call and he says we're working cattle, I say okay, bye. And so
read the room, lesson 1.
Read the room. And so we probably didn't have as good a handle on the hard conversations as we could have or maybe should have when we first moved back. I think because we were trying to learn too, and we had small kids, and so we were figuring lots of things out. And so we kind of went for let's just roll with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't always work for us, and sometimes it was fine, but sometimes it was not. So then usually that meant there were tears at home.
Yeah.
And we tried to keep that, within our walls and then move forward and let it be okay. We have evolved.
Yeah. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that journey. And like one of the reasons I wanted to start out with when you started is because I think we all think, oh, we should just have this figured out now. Well, it's a journey. Y'all been back for 12 years, 15 years?
Yeah. I don't know.
And working in this business for a long time, we continually improve our communication. Even people who are like, I'm a really good communicator. I don't know anybody who says I'm a really good communicator and I don't need to get any better. Like nobody says that. And if they do, I have questions for you. But so that's why I wanted to start with what does it feel like at the beginning? There's all this angst. You're like, there's dread, there's involved, and you learned one lesson quick. Read the room. I think Jocelyn also says, which we like, is know your audience.
Yes, that's his phrase for sure.
No, you're talking to. I think those two things were a good lesson. But what else have you learned? Like as you look back now, what are the things that you're like, oh, here's what we've done well and how we shifted that?
Well, I made some notes on my cute little Post-it because I actually had some of these conversations with a client yesterday. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I need to write these down so I remember to share these with Jen. One thing that we've learned and really put into practice, especially in the past, 2 years, is that hard conversations don't happen once.
Say it again. Say it again.
Yes, they don't happen once. And I wrote down, I'm like, it's almost like when you buy a car or buy a house, it's a negotiation, but not a negotiation, but kind of, right? Yeah. So we, with the holidays coming up, I've been talking to clients about this and how we want to handle things for our life and be respectful to other people, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I'm like, well, okay, so we did this last year because our life as the people who are the oldest and who had kids first, we're like always the one that's pushing. We always feel like we're the ones that's like, no, we can't do that because of nap time, or no, we can't do that because of basketball practice, and no one else is there yet. So we just feel like we look difficult, right?
Yeah. Oh, and that's that story you're telling yourself. I feel like I'm whatever.
Yes. And I'm really like an expert at telling myself stories. So
all of us are sellers.
Yes. So we last year had a situation where we needed to make a really hard decision, and we knew that people weren't going to be happy with the decision that we knew we needed to make for our family. Like I say, for our family within our four walls. And so we sat down, Jocelyn and Addie, and had a conversation like, okay, what do we want? And what are we willing to accept? Like if this is our big goal, where are we willing to back to, and where are hard lines? And then when we approach this at first, do we go all in or do we go a little bit soft? And so we would say, and the other thing I learned, especially with working and doing these things with family, is that I have conversations with my family, and he has conversations with his family. Every family is different, but in my family, all words are received differently depending on the mouth they come from.
Yes.
So I'm like, all right, we are going to plot this out, and then you are going to go and you're going to present this. And then they're probably going to have a conversation about it, but then it's going to have to stew a little bit. And then they're going to come back to us and say, okay, what if we XYZ? And then he's going to come back to me and we're going to hash it out again. And maybe it's fine. Maybe we have like a counter offer. I don't know. But it took a couple of weeks of, well, this is our line.
Yeah.
But we are willing to flex here. And we can adjust there. And they'd be like, okay, well, I see your line, but what if we XYZ'd it?
Yes. Yes.
And then, you know, and it worked out and it was fine and there were no hurt feelings, but it was not a one and done situation.
Here, I just want to like pull out the nuggets here so that we're so good. One is you and Jocelyn had a conversation about what you wanted. So in my How to Have a Hard Conversations course, I have a whole module about how do you even figure it out? Because sometimes we don't know what we want. So how do you figure out what do we want and what does that look like for us? So first step is you had to figure that out. And then you decided what we were willing to take. Like, here's our big line and we're willing to negotiate in this area, because we cannot have hard conversations well with people if we're just like, there's absolutely no room. There's just, and granted, we're talking about not situations of abuse and all of that, people. So just,
right.
No, that's what we're talking about. You know, like you have to be willing to just wiggle a little bit and then you let it be. Like you let it be. That was super important. And then when we're talking specifically about in-laws, here is my big tip. So Addie's been married a long time. I've been married almost 25 years. I talk to my family and he talks to his family is a super great practice that usually works out well. Now, after 25 years, I think my parents might like my husband more than me. So we do that sometimes.
Yeah. Well, again, read the room. Read
the room. But the other thing that's super powerful is that you say we. So I, Jen, go to talk to my family and I say, we have decided, or we are doing this. That's a really great trick for family in-laws, even if you don't own a business with them.
And let me addendum that by saying there were many, many years of, well, Addie says she doesn't want to.
And you just want to be like.
And I'm like, hey, dude, bus tires don't go over me well.
I don't like this stripy look.
No. And so, I mean, we had hard conversations about that as well. Like,
absolutely.
Hey, stop throwing me under the bus here.
Yes.
We're a team. It's not just me.
That's such a great example. And I have like vague memories of this from last year, us kind of chatting through this, because we all had these weird holiday things last year. And I think it's less this year, but I still think we haven't totally come through that. Here's what feels weird about before. I don't think we've ever, just as a whole, finished processing what 2020 was and how 2021 is unfolding. So I think that's such a valuable piece of advice of getting clear and then knowing where you're willing to negotiate and letting it be. You didn't try to like make the decision now. Like our kids come to us and we're like, if it has to be now, it has to be no. And so they really don't like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But.
Yes. The other thing that I wrote down, it's kind of shifting it a little bit, is that I have found, and I don't know how you feel about it, that the anticipation of the conversation is 1,000 times worse usually than the actual conversation. Mm-hmm. It's like going to get your mammogram or get your teeth checked. Like you get yourself so wound up about like the coulds and the shoulds and the what ifs and the directions it could go that getting it done usually takes 15 minutes and it's not that big of a deal.
Yes, absolutely. And we do that for so many reasons. Back to that idea of the stories that we tell ourselves that we're all bestsellers. We tell ourselves it's going to be this, it's going to be this, it's going to be this. And then we start that spiral. And one of the things that I was teaching in the course is, how do you know when your personality is going to spiral like that? So as an Enneagram coach, the whole course is not about the Enneagram, but there's one little lesson. And and I think for you as a one, I would love for you to share for a hot second just about what do those stories sound like as an Enneagram one when you're like anticipating.
Oh gosh, they're always very defensive and negative.
Okay.
Always. Like it's like I get nervous because I think about all of the things that I feel very valid in, right? Like this is what I feel and what I think and how I'm doing it. And this is partially too why we use each other as in betweens, because I know where I'm going to feel things differently than him and where they're going to hear things differently than what I mean. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, if it's just me in anticipation, I'm going to think of all of the ways that they could come at me and tell me that I did things wrong.
Mm.
And I think of all of the things where I feel like I have made this plan and this case for myself, and like whatever is happening, I've thought it through and tried to make it very kind. And they're going to be like, except you're the worst. and and then I have to deal with that agony for the rest of my life under the covers in my room.
That's not hyperbolic at all. It's very
Right. Right. And I'm never prone to dramatic statements.
I just really appreciate you sharing that, because I think sometimes we forget that all of us can be prone to that. And here's the big idea, that we can catch those thoughts and say, hold on, that's not how I'm writing this story. Right. And that is so valuable, just, I mean, as a life skill, friends, but really when we're talking about hard conversations, because when you start believing those stories, you go into the conversation believing that they're true, and then you're already defensive before you ever open your mouth.
Absolutely.
And so sharing like, okay, this is how the story shows up for me. Here's how my personality is like, oh, it's going to be fine if I just, either avoid it, or we're just going to say it like this and everybody be happy. Yeah. I've had to learn that isn't always true either. Because then I'm shocked when other people like have questions or
question
a little bit. I'm like, wait, what? Wasn't it amazing? I don't understand. So we've all grown, friend. We've all grown. So I want you to talk just a little bit, so family and dealing with the adults in our family is a whole thing. But the whole dealing with the little humans and not so little humans anymore in our family are another thing. So when you think about those types of conversations that you have with your kids, like, I would rather just avoid this conversation. What are some of those ways that you've gotten past that feeling and been willing to say, no, this is important, I'm going to do this?
I don't know if I ever feel that in the same way as I do with other people. I think because, I mean, for the most part, we have pretty open lines.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they have something, normally I can tell, right? Like if they have something up, I'm like, why'd you kick your brother? There's right. Some words that need to come out from that. Like that, it's not just this minute. And so my kids usually need hugs. To go with a conversation, you need hugs, or like as much as I don't always want it, it's like some sort of like physical contact to know that like we're going to talk about this, but I still love you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that is something that I figured out. And I figured that more as they've gotten older.
Yeah.
Like, especially with my big kids, like if there's something funky with them and they need to talk about things, then I've got to like squeeze them first.
That's so good.
Or they need to be strapped in.
That's my trick.
Yes.
So particularly with my boys. So my boys are now 19 and 17. But especially through middle school and high school, strapped into the car was a really great place to talk. And it's like the one time that I recommend not like sitting down and being intentional about it. With teenagers in particular, you just kind of come in sideways. And so when you're in the car, you can say things because I can't actually look at you. that it helps teenagers be a little bit more brave. Now, I do think there's so much value in teaching them. We're going to sit at the table and have a conversation, but I think there's so much value to that being strapped in the car, and we're not making direct eye contact because that's actually really scary, even for the people that you love. And I know my parents love me, but I don't know what's going on right now and all of that. And so that strapping in is a really big deal.
Yeah. And for us, like, we just keep having to relearn their communication differences over and over and over, because I have one that, like, as soon as her butt hits the seat, the words come flying out of her mouth. And I have another one that will only talk to one parent, like, by force. And the parent that gets left out is never happy with it, and it's always weird. And so I've just had to try to figure out how to manage that. Mm-hmm. And then also when to learn, like, hey, other kids, get out of here so I can talk to them.
Yes. Yeah.
Or when to, like, tuck in or something, just to kind of make that separation. And there's usually cues and hints that something like that needs to happen, but sometimes it's a matter of your butt hits the front seat and all the words come out. I have found for us, like, away games are really an important time in our life, because after the game, in the dark, on the drive back home, when you have chips and a sandwich and all of the words come out when you're the only person in the car. And so even when people are like, oh no, you could send a grandma to that game, I'm like, no, I kind of need to go. Not for the game, but for the ride home.
Yes. And that's why Addie reads at games.
Yeah, that's right.
I love it. One of the things that I find myself struggling with, and I still, because again, my personality is like, it's going to be fine. Like, I just want to, sunshine and rainbow over here, that I'm just like, I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to have this parenting conversation right now. I don't want to do that. Can't it just be okay? And then I can convince myself it's okay, that they'll figure it out on their own. I don't have to be the direct teacher all the time, which is a true statement. I don't have to be the direct teacher all the time. But there are times where I know that I'm avoiding. I don't want to get involved. I don't want, it's painful. It's going to involve this. I'm going to have to be the adult in the room, which is such a drag.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm always trying to work through and manage. Is this something I should just let lie and they will kind of figure it out? Or is this something I know I need to help them and have this conversation with them as a parent? And I'm always discerning that line. And I have a few questions that I kind of ask myself to go through, just because otherwise I think I'm too prone to they'll figure it out. I figured it out.
I could have been that way too. Mm-hmm. But mine usually isn't from avoiding. It's from the lens of, like, I want them to learn this.
Oh,
like,
yeah, totally.
Life lessons are important. And so, so I will let them try to solve their own problems. But there have been times when I step in without telling them. And not often at all. Mm-hmm. But there are times when I know that, like, there were a couple of instances last year that I knew that it would stress my kid out more to know I was going to have a conversation than if I told her after the fact. So I just did it and then explained what I did, so in case she heard something about it. But there are other times when, like, my 6th grader at the time came home and had some, like, seating issues. She was, like, put in a place where it was very distracting and she was having a hard time focusing. And I was like, okay, this is very valid. Someone needs to say something. Would you like to do it, or would you like me to do that for you? And she's
love that.
Why don't I take care of it? And she did. And I think it was hard for her, but she did it, and you could tell she felt better for it.
Yeah, absolutely. When I think about some of the hard conversations I've had with our family, like the 6 of us, it has often been with, especially our oldest, questioning, why did we have to talk to other parents about things? So, like, he would want to go to somebody's house and we just didn't know them. And we didn't, our kids didn't grow up in the community that they went to high school and junior high in. So we were getting to know people, and everybody has their own rules and safety things. And I don't want to judge somebody else, but I'm also like, we have our boundaries, and I can't
Right.
enforce our boundaries if I don't know what theirs are.
Right.
And so whenever I would make those phone calls, the parents would be great. Like, they're like, absolutely not. That is not what we are doing. We're like, if our kids told you that, that is not what is happening. You know, like most of the time that would be the story. But the hard conversation would be to go back to my kid and say, here's what this conversation looks like. And it doesn't mean anything about you. You're making up this story in your mind. And we, yes, we'll continue to do this for a while because you're 13, 15. Like, you're not a grown person yet. And
Right.
we're teaching you how to make good choices, and we are still also responsible that you're safe. So
Yes.
these things happen. I think some of those, and I would dread those because the story I would tell in my mind is that it was going to be forever. Like, our kids were going to be super upset and it was just going to last, and I was going to get stuck. Hi, Enneagram 7. I was going to get stuck in this conversation, and they were going to try to prove their way out of it. And there was no, like, this is what's happened. Like, it's in the past.
Yeah.
And so the more practice I had at learning how to be really clear, I think that clarity really helped, and also owning what was mine. Like, this is my job, and I understand and empathize that this is hard for you. And still, this is what I'm doing. And starting to work through I statements and other things like that that could help me own what my job as a parent and let them be who they are as a kid, and that those roles are fine.
Yeah.
So I think about those. Whew.
We do that some, like, preemptively. I think we talked on my podcast about pre-gaming hard conversations. Okay. And we will do the whole, like, okay, when we go here, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Like, this is how it's going to work. This is what these people do, and that is fine. We don't do that.
Right.
So if so-and-so is climbing the curtains, it's not my job to tell them no, but it's also your job to not do what they're doing.
Right. We used to tell our kids when we would, like, drop them off places, we were like, be kind, be polite, and be a Whitmer. Like, this, like, so that was like the indication of, here are the Whitmer rules. And that follows you as Whitmer wherever you may go. And that was kind of our little reminder. And also just like, hey, you belong to us. Like, there was a little bit of double in that phrase, but that totally saves us so much, like that pre-gaming of the conversation and how we're going to approach that together. I'm just now looking at the time, and we've been chatting for longer than I thought we would. Although I did say in our box, I was like, I meant this to be 15, 20 minutes, but it's the two of us, so I bet it'll be longer. And here we are. Before we go, I want to tell everybody, one of the reasons I'm doing this series this week about hard conversations is because I have a course right now that you can get called How to Have Hard Conversations, Even If You Think It's Impossible. And it's an at your own pace course. It covers all the things that you need to know about communication basics. And then also, how do you prepare, that pre-game strategy that Addie and I were just talking about? How do you prepare? How do you get clear? Then what do you do? What are the words that you say in the middle of the hard conversation? And I think my favorite part is how you close well. How do you close so it doesn't feel that awkward, icky, like at the end? How do you close so you miss that? And then what do you do when somebody approaches you with a hard conversation? It's not you trying to approach somebody. What do you do? So that's what's in the course. You can get it at the link in my bio. I think that's where you would go. And so it's only available until Wednesday, November 10th. So make sure you jump on the stick. So Addie, my gracious friend who is here sick, you'd never know. Tell the people where they can find you and what you're doing right now, and so everybody can get all of the Addie Yoder goodness.
Well, you can find me here on Instagram at addie.yoder. I also have a podcast called Grace and Growth with Addie. New episodes drop on Thursdays. So a new one just dropped yesterday, and I hope you like it if you listen. And then you can go to addieyoder.com and scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, and there's a really quick little box where you can sign up to get emails from me on Mondays, where I share weird stories and life lessons and sometimes the books that I'm reading and just stuff to help keep you going on Mondays to set your week off right.
Yeah. What's the book club this month?
Oh, I have a book club.
Yeah, you have a book club.
I have a book club. It's on Facebook called Book Club with Addie, and we just picked our November book. It is not in my brain. What is? Oh, it is Only Woman in the Room by Marie Benedict.
Ooh.
No, I've already read it. It's really good. Have you read it?
I have not.
It is about Hedy Lamarr, and she invented something during World War II to help detect missiles
Yes, yeah.
that they use in cell phones today.
Yes. She was a side character in another book that I read about World War II.
Yeah.
She was like a cameo character.
Yeah. It's a really cool book.
All right. We'll be here for ages if we talk about books. So,
Yeah.
But you need to follow Addie.Yoder. She is a fantastic follow about books, about family, about just life. Bringing order to chaos is her special gift. And also all things ag and farm, especially corn. Corn. Loves her corn. And I hope you go get How to Have Hard Conversations. I know it's going to help you with what's coming in the next couple months, but also repeatable. Like Addie and I were talking at the beginning, what was it like early and how do you grow? It's going to be repeatable for you. So you can keep going back to it and getting better and better. So I hope you go grab it. All right, everybody. Have a great Friday. Thank you for joining us, Addie. I'll see you later.